number 85 of At Your Service with Haber and Martinez. I'm Haber, and Martinez is not here with me today, but I do have a special guest sitting next to me, a DUI gladiator named Stephen Daniels. Stephen's a really interesting guy. I met him back in the early 2000s at a annual DUI seminar put on by the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers called Breath, Blood, and Tears. Stephen was a lecturer at that seminar. He's actually lectured at many of them, but this is the first time that I met him. And what I remembered about Stephen was two things. Number one, he's not a lawyer, yet he knows more than most lawyers I know about the subject of breathalyzers, breath testing, and breath machines. And the second thing is that Stephen created an annual award that he gives out at the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers to the number one DUI defense attorney in his estimation. And he's got his own criterion for how he picks them. But what's interesting is that Stephen's a guy just like any other guy who got popped for DUI wrongfully. Not only did he get wrongfully arrested, but he got wrongfully convicted. And not only did he get wrongfully convicted, but he took his case all the way up to the Florida Supreme Court, which wrongfully railroaded him. Well, as we know, sometimes out of bad things, we get good things. And there is a silver lining here because that motivated Stephen to become one of the nationally foremost leading experts in the area of breath test machines, specifically in the area of debunking the junk science that is behind the alleged breath test machine. So with that said, let me introduce Stephen to you. Stephen, thank you so much for joining us today and for agreeing to educate the public a little bit about breath tests.
Well, thank you for asking me. I want to clear something up, though. I came up with the concept of the Gladiator Award to recognize the attorney who did the most to protect citizens' privilege to drive and to help the defense bar. I set it up like the Heisman Trophy. So what it was there was the commission, which would be me and the previous or any recipient. But the facto memberships are the ones that decided on who won. Now, everyone had to submit 2 votes. The first vote got 3 points. The second vote got 2. And actually, you could get more second place votes and win. And so it was the facto members. They're the people that knew who were in. I mean, I followed it, on the listserv. I knew who was doing the motions and doing, in the trenches, so to say. But the facto members are the ones that actually nominated, and we went from there like that, and then it took off. So it was designed by I designed it, and it came to life by a world famous wood sculptor that I commissioned to do it, and his name was Julio Navarro. It's all solid mahogany, and it's absolutely amazing. But we had a lot of fun with it from 13 up to right when COVID hit. So, but it's still an issue.
Well, it's important because unfortunately, there's all too many snake oil salesman lawyers. And you find this a lot in DUI cases. You find this across the board, but there's just too many lawyers out there that don't do the work. They sign the client, they collect the fee, and then they just plea them out, kick the can down the road as long as they can. They don't challenge, they don't file, they don't argue, they don't litigate. They just basically bullshit until their fees are paid.
Yeah, and
so you've been really instrumental.
I call them dump truck attorneys, and recently had that.
You call them what?
Dump truck attorneys. They don't know the
dump truck attorneys.
Dump truck attorneys. They don't know the science behind breath testing. And so there's so many people out there, and when they get a DUI, they'll call this guy. He knows. Well, if you get cancer, you get more than one opinion. But most people just call and talk to the first attorney. They don't know what questions they ask him. They don't ask him, what continuing credits do you do? I mean, where do you go? Do you go to seminars? Do you learn? That's just something. There's so many out there. What it is you can pay for a list to find out who got popped, and then after you get arrested, you're going to get all these shiny brochures saying hire me that look good. These guys really don't know anything. I recently had a case out of West Palm Beach. A civil attorney actually retained me she was out of New Jersey. She moved to Florida. She got popped. She had an earlier one 10 years ago after she won a big case, and she was down here and she got popped, and the attorney dropped her 7 days before her DMV hearing. I've got a website that I haven't touched since 2010, and luckily, my contact information was still on it. She called me. And here's something that it's the first time I've done it in my career, and it was in July that I did this of this year. She retained me. I noticed that the breath test operator kept on manipulating the test, and she was wound up being charged with refusal. Well, the problem was that she got aggravated. I took the same classes as she did, and she got aggravated with the person. She kept on pulling the hose out of her mouth, and then the client finally said, why are you pulling the hose out of her mouth? Because it tone stopping. Well, it tone stopping because you're pulling it out of her mouth. If you listen to the audio, you can hear it still going as she's pulling it out of her mouth. Well, she knew what was going on, and she goes, I'm demanding blood. I want blood. You don't need a warrant. I want blood. And they wouldn't give it to her. So they let her imply consent, and then go there in the second one, same thing started happening again. And finally, the breath test operator got aggravated. And we're taught in class, you're not to be confrontational, you're to get the evidence. That's it. That's your main job. They had 8 other toxilizers they could have put her on. She kept on saying she was trying. In my opinion, she could have said, you know what, let's go test you on this one. If she tested on another one, the same thing happened, then more likely she was trying to manipulate the test. But you could tell that she wasn't. And so after they read her apply consent, and then the second time that started all over again, the breath test operator looked at the arresting officer sitting in the corner and says, officer, he goes, yeah, call it a refusal. She charged her with a refusal. And then what a lot of attorneys miss is at the bottom of it, there's an affirmation that I, so-and-so, hold a valid breath test operator permit. I administered this test with the in accordance with the Chapter 11D-8 rules. Well, she signed it, he signed it, and it was my opinion right then and there was notary fraud because she did not defer. She deferred to the arresting officer. He doesn't have a pen. He had no business telling her that what was a refusal and what wasn't. And so, here this guy dumps her 7 days before the hearing, and I wound up filing internal investigation reports on both of them for notary fraud. Well, he didn't show up to the DUI hearing. She got her license back with the other evidence that I presented. And then she didn't show up to the trial. So she won the trial too.
That's amazing. So
Yeah.
I think,
and
just
so
to kind of dummy this back, just to kind of dummy this back a little bit for the audience who may not really understand what you're talking about. There's 2 components, and this show is actually going to be broken into 2 parts. This first part, we're dealing with the arrest component. The second part will deal with post-arrest. But
all right,
breathalyzer machines, breath testing devices are tools that were developed by private industry, usurped by law enforcement, and are used as an alleged investigative tool to establish probable cause to make an arrest. And so in one way to look at a breath machine, you're damned if you do and you're damned if you don't on the initial phase. If you refuse breath, you create incriminating evidence in the form of what's called a refusal. And a prosecutor has the ability to argue a theory called consciousness of guilt, where they can say, yeah, Haber refused, but he only refused because he knew if he blew, he was going to blow over. So your refusal creates, in a way, incriminating evidence. And if you blow and you blow over, you create incriminating evidence. So this tool is what we're talking about here. And this is where Stephen is a Stephen Hawking. He's a master of this, because this is not something that was made for law enforcement. It was something that was usurped by law enforcement and then manipulated for a law enforcement purpose, correct?
Yes, it's manipulated. And the ironic thing is, you can get a blood test and you can get the results from the previous. You can see what the test that they did on it. I mean, there's a lot more discovery that validates the results or invalidates it. On breath testing, the state can manipulate the underlying data of the breath test result. I mean, they do that in Florida. The brochure clearly says that the program manager can configure the software, and they do that in Florida. And what it is the Intoxilizer 8000, which is used in over 19 states, it requires a minimum of 1.1 breath volume for a sufficient volume. So you have 3 minutes to provide a breath sample. If you don't provide that 1.1, the machine keeps on prompting you, please provide a sample now. When it times out, if you did provide a sample, it'll say volume not met, and then it'll request a second one. So you have to, in Florida, you have to provide two blows within 2 minutes, within no two of each other, within 15 minutes of each other. And so in other words, the first blow needs to be, say, a 0.089, and the second one needs to be a 0.069 or 0.109. And you're going to get charged with the benefit of the doubt, the lower one. But the affidavit that they submit in court does not have the breath volume. Now, what I focus my work on is the underlying data, which is called COBRA data, Computer Online Breath Archives. That has the breath volume in Florida. The problem is the program manager in Florida closed other tables of data that would be beneficial, or I call Brady evidence, basically exculpatory evidence would be beneficial to the defendant. And I discovered that in 2008 when I got my first case out of the state. I started my business in July 2007. And I got my first case out of state in Oregon. And I wound up getting the COBRA data there. And when I saw that, they had the BRAC result, the breath volume, the sample duration, and the sample attempts. And I was like, oh my God, there it is. It just jumped at me. I was like, sample attempts. We've tried getting the source code of this machine to find out how it works. You know, where does it take the breath? Where does it do the calculation? It doesn't measure anything. It calculates it using algorithms that have never been peer reviewed. And so no one knows.
Let me, Steve, let me jump in for a second. So just so that the folks understand, you've been pulled over or you've been approached by a police officer while you're in your car or about your car, and the officer, for whatever reasons, decides that they're going to conduct a DUI investigation. Maybe they smell alcohol. Maybe they see bloodshot, watery eyes. Maybe you were sound asleep behind the wheel of the car at a red light. Who knows what? For whatever reason, they come up with their own reasonable suspicion to then conduct this investigation. And ultimately, they're going to ask you for road sobriety tests, blah, blah, blah. But at some point in time, it gets down to a breathalyzer, and they ask you to blow into the machine. Explain to the folks, how does the machine work? What is the physical process of the breath test device?
Well, again, when you blow into that, you have to blow in with a sufficient pressure in your breath. It takes a 0.17 to open the valve up so your breath can get into the sample chamber, and takes a 0.15 to maintain that. You have to provide a 1.1 liter of breath. Once the machine knows that it has a sufficient sample, then it will prompt you for a second one. Again, those two samples need to be within an O2 of each other. If the second sample isn't within the O2 of the first, then it's requested.
Right. So you blow into. You're sitting at. So I'm sitting at the table. Officer unfriendly says to me, "Blow into the machine," and I make the decision to acquiesce. And I blow into the machine. Let's just say hypothetically that my two breath samples are fine. What's going on inside of this device? How is this device taking my breath and then spitting out a printout that says that my limit, my BAC, my breath or blood alcohol content X?
What it is?
How does that work?
It works on infrared light, a light beam. It pulses 4 pulses per second into the sample chamber where your breath is at. Now that's a small sample chamber. It's only 29 cc's. So if you ever use those Afrin spray bottles, or what are those energy drinks? Those little energy shots. Those are 52.
The 5-hour energy.
Yeah, the 5 hours. So those are 52 milliliters. So it's about half of that. So your breath is captured in there. There's 2 filters on the end of that sample chamber. It pulses these lights in. The one filter detects allegedly acetone. In other words, they put that safety precaution there in case someone was a diabetic and was producing similar organic compounds as alcohol. And then the other one's for alcohol. So the machine knows how much energy is in there in the beginning, and the alcohol atoms or in the acetone will absorb that infrared band at a specific wavelength. So it knows how much power is there in the beginning, and it figures out how much is there at the end, and that's the calculation it does to determine your breath alcohol concentration. But now that you say that,
that calculus that you're talking about, that's across the board, right? Because when Officer Unfriendly asks me to blow. When Officer Unfriendly asks me to blow into the breathalyzer, all that Officer Unfriendly does is reset the thing to 0 and enter my name and my driver's license number. That's it.
Yeah.
They don't enter. They don't know how much I weigh. They don't know how tall I am. They don't know anything about my metabolism. So I could be 6'4", 280 pounds, or I could be 5 foot nothing and 120 pounds, and it's the same machine. There's no calibration.
Right. Right. Well,
correct?
it assumes everyone's the same, and that's, to me, that's not really scientific. But you want to go back to another point where you talked about what do you do and you get pulled over, in the cops asking you. There's two questions they're going to ask you at night. They don't ask you in the daytime. Where you come from? And you had anything to drink? And what they do is everything they ask you to do is to build evidence against you to get you in front of that machine. So the odor of alcohol, that's not an indicator of being drunk. That's just an indicator you might have consumed some alcohol. Bloodshot eyes are no longer considered a clue because it could be work issued or you're tired or something. But when they ask you that, have you had anything, where you come from, have you had anything to drink? What you're going to see is if you say yes, they're going to ask you a follow-up question. Well, I was at Chili's. What'd you eat? Did you eat? When's the last time you ate? Oh yeah, I had a burger there. Well, now they're going to take their time doing a field sobriety test because they want you to be at your peak when they get you in front of that machine. If you told them you're on an empty stomach, they're going to do those FSTs on the side of the road as quick as they can to get you into that. But some attorneys will tell you not to blow, and that to me would be a dump truck attorney, because it's just like the breath testing they consider junk science. Well, to me, it's not, because they're taking everyone's the same. He's 21 to 100 is the ratio, the blood alcohol to breath is. And when somebody says don't blow, if somebody's had one drink or two drinks and they've heard an attorney say don't blow, I mean, that's absolutely ridiculous to tell somebody that. So this is what I tell them. Look, you need to remember one thing. If you can't do simple math and you can't remember how many drinks you had and when you started drinking, then you need to Uber and never drive. Because it's simple. If you look at it and you say every drink that you have, you're either a 0.015 up to a 0.018, you might want to say. So you get off happy hour on a Friday, you're on an empty stomach, you have a beer. The first one for a guy goes down real quick. The second one, you're finishing in half an hour. You finish the third one in the first hour. So if you just go in even numbers, a 0.0015, you would think you're 0.45, but you're not, because you eliminated one of those drinks, you're 0.3. If you did the same thing, the second hour, you're going to be in 0.6. Even though you drank 6 beers, you're going to be around 0.6 or higher. So, you should, if you can't remember that, you shouldn't be drinking. So, it's not against the law to drink and drive. So, 1 or 2 drinks, but never refuse. If you only had 1 or 2 beers, there's no way you're going to be over 0.8.
So I think, it's fair to say that most people are not Pythagoras, and we myself speaking included, I'm not that great with math. I operate under the basic principle that you enunciated, but even more simple, which is if I'm drinking, I don't drive. It's just that simple. It's basic math for me, because the most expensive Lyft or Uber is still going to be, exponentially less expensive than defending any. Yeah.
That's another thing.
That's one thing, but I want to.
Good.
I just wanted to tack on 2 more things to what you just said, because this show is all about, if nothing else, it's about pro tips. And you brought up 2 pro tips that I can think of off the top of my head, which the audience should know. One of those pro tips is you were talking about how the police are asking you questions, where were you drinking? Where were you drinking? What were you drinking? Did you drink? Blah, 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 blah. So in that event, when that is occurring, I always tell people to remember the Haber PA, hashtag Haber PA, simple modified acronym, hashtag UpX2, which stands for shut up and lawyer up. You don't need to answer law enforcement questions, and you should not answer law enforcement questions. If you remember to hashtag UpX2, shut up and lawyer up, or invoke your 5th Amendment privilege against self-incrimination and your 6th Amendment right to counsel, then you're not going to generate incriminating statements against yourself. That's pro tip 1. Pro tip 2 was, you also mentioned, and it's a very important point for people to note, it is not illegal to drink and drive. There is no crime in Florida for consuming alcohol and then getting behind the wheel of a vehicle or the helm of a vessel. It is illegal to operate a motor vehicle, to assume actual physical control of a motor vehicle or a vessel while you are either impaired, which is a subjective test, or you have a presumptive breath or blood alcohol level above the legal limit, which is 0.08 for adults or 0.2 for minors. So those are 2 pro tips people can take out of the gate. But you also said something earlier that I want to bring up, because you talked about diabetics, and I don't want to focus on that, but I want to extrapolate from that, because the first time that I met you, at Breath, Blood, and Tears. You took
Yeah,
your
I remember that.
Intoxilizer 8000 in front of the entire group. You sat in a stage. There were probably 250 lawyers watching as you calibrated it to 0. You produced a printout of 000. You blew into the machine 000. And then you took a loaf of Wonder Bread
Wonder Bread,
and you
yeah, shoot up
crumpled
some
up
Wonder Bread.
a piece. You crumpled up a piece or two of Wonder Bread, popped them in your mouth while you were sitting on the stage, chewed them up, and I don't know, 10, 15 minutes later, you blew into the machine.
No,
You weren't
it was
consuming any
relatively
alcohol.
quick. It was relatively quick. I chewed up, made a paste, swallowed it, and what did I blew a couple. I think the highest I've ever blown on Wonder Bread was a .045 on Wonder Bread.
So are there other substances or things in nature or medical conditions included that can affect a breath reading?
Yeah, if you're a diabetic and you start getting to that kinesitosis stage, your body actually manufactures a organic compound that the machine could add in to your breath test results, and that's why they touted this machine as such a great one, because it was supposed to be able to detect it. But the problem is that Florida, when they do the test to show that it's working, they put it in pure water. And the right way to do it, we used to do it on the Intoxilizer 5000, was they add that acetone to the alcohol, so the machine could say, hey, there's something else in here. The funny thing is, I recently was writing a blog. DOT doesn't check for that. They add it to alcohol when they do their test. They add 2 millimeters, where FDLE adds 3 millimeters to water. There's no way the machine's not going to detect it, because there's no alcohol in there. So it's going to say something's in here, right? And they go to court saying, "Oh, look, we know it. It works. It flagged this." Well, DOT, I've got the transcripts because I was involved in this in the West Palm Beach case, where Arthur Flores, they edited it, and then Brian Gabriel out of West Palm Beach, the attorney on the case, he basically said, "So you're not worried that it inflated the rates on this?" And he goes, "No, we're not worried that it didn't detect it, And Brian's like, "Well, wouldn't DOT want to do that?" And they're like, "We only care about it whether it's intolerance." And that blew me away. And I got the transcripts for this. And then I've got a friend that passed away, John Fusco, who owned National Patent, and he made a better machine. John would give you the source code of this machine. He'd just say, "Bring me a flash drive. I got nothing to hide." There's a video of him with another attorney, a friend of mine, Willie Mays, out of Michigan, where John talks about there's an inherent bias in the machine that allows interference to be there without being flagged. And that's the one thing on these machines. There's messages that says, "Hey, there's something wrong. It's incorrect condition or incorrect procedure," and it's going to tell you. But nobody knows what the trip values, like turn the light on or off. Nobody knows what those are. Well, I found Patrick Murphy, the program manager for FDLE, got to go and see the source code, and they let him leave. I felt like 6 lines of code, and I found in his code, and I got certified records of this, where he's got the bottom line and then the top line, and of what the machine. So if it's a 026 of acetone, the machine's reading that more higher than 026, it'll flag it. If not, it's under. And basically, when you look at it, you never know when you blow if some of that's in there, because the state hasn't disclosed what the triggers are. So, Michael, they're coming back to circling around what you said. If you're going to drink, don't drive. I mean, these machines are so bad. You could actually be under an 08, but the machines, there's maybe you fasted, you're on a keto diet, and part of your breath wasn't alcohol.
So there's a lot of protocols. I mean, obviously, these things are incredibly highly regulated. Whether or not anybody actually follows the regulations and protocols is another story. But this is one of the things that a good lawyer and a good expert will go through and dig through, right? We're going to look at maintenance records. We're going to look at the history of the machine. We're going to look at the annuals, the semi-annuals, the monthlies. We're going to get as much data as we can to show that there's a possibility that the machine was either not functioning properly or malfunctioned at some point at or about or actually during a given test, right?
Yeah, and Michael, we only know what FDLE tells in Florida, and FDLE and CMI, the manufacturer, tells them. Well, here's something I uncovered that's very, very important for all attorneys. Anytime you get a test, if your attorney hasn't asked for the repair records from that machine from day one, you got the wrong attorney. What I found is on a machine number 812, there was interference, a lot of interference. And when we first started back in 06 and 07, I was like, I couldn't believe that there's that many interferent detects in these subject breath tests. And I'm like, there can't be that many people that are diabetic going out getting hammered and drinking and driving. And then on the flip side, I said there can't be that many people on a keto diet that are going out and getting hammered, drinking, and driving. But the tell sign was when I started seeing that in the dry gas. And when we started seeing that dry gas, I knew something was wrong, because you can't see an interferent dry gas. It's a closed delivery system. That's the dry gas tank attached to it. And when I got the repair records from that machine, the J logo, the Forcible Electronics, replaced the IR source, because his repair record said detecting interferent when none's present. When I went back and looked at that machine, you wouldn't believe how many subject breath tests were littered with that. And then it's because you don't see that, Michael. They do the agency inspection once a month, and you don't see that up online until 4 to 6 weeks after it's done. So the first line to be able to detect that there's a problem with the IR source is the breath test operator. And these guys weren't taught to say, hey, there might be something wrong if we're seeing an INT detect, in the dry gas. And so there were literally 200 something people that tested on a machine that had evidence used against them that wasn't scientifically reliable. Because if it's detecting interferent where there's none present, it can't be relied to detect alcohol. And that's something that all the attorneys test.
Here's another pro tip for the folks. Most DUIs are misdemeanor offenses. You have to have multiple DUIs, or you have to have an accident involving serious bodily injury or a fatality for it to be bumped up to a felony. And when we think about misdemeanors, most people don't give that the weight and seriousness of their big brother or big sister felony.
It's serious.
Cases.
It stays on your record forever.
That said, I have a saying at Haber, PA, and it is, one person's misdemeanor is another person's murder charge. So we have to take every case seriously. But what you guys need to take away from this aspect of this show is that for your lawyer to do the right job, and this holds true in any case, your lawyer is only as good as the facts, the evidence, and the experts that he or she has around him or her. So, we're limited by things that we can't control. If you tell the police that you had 17 shots of tequila before you got behind the wheel of the car, and you're on body cam saying it, your statements are coming in, and there's nothing we can do to stop that as a general rule. If you take a swing at a police officer on the roadside, that's coming in. It's a fact. So that's, again, one of the reasons we say less is more, #UpX2. But the corollary to that is that if you equip us with the tools to do the job right, the odds that it gets done right and is favorably resolved are exponentially increased. So if I'm enabled by my client to hire an expert like Stephen to come in and debunk the machine and explain to a jury why they cannot rely upon that printout, because tell me if I'm telling the truth or lying here, Stephen. In every DUI trial, when a breath card is introduced into evidence, that prosecutor holds that piece of paper in his or her hand as if they are Moses walking down from Mount Sinai with a tablet that was carved in stone by the hand of God himself. They allowed that thing like it was the most.
Let me touch on this for you, because the people need to know this. When we went online in March of 2006, within months, we found hundreds of breath test results with 0 breath volumes. We actually definitely didn't know what happened. They contacted CMI, the manufacturer. They admitted that there was missing instructions in the source code. They and what happened was you got 3 minutes to provide a sufficient sample. They said what happened is people started blowing at 2 minutes, 55 seconds, blew past that 3-minute mark. And the machine didn't know what to do with the breath volume since there was no instructions. Well, that meant that the person that wrote the card was smart enough to say, remember that BRAC result that went with it, but not the breath volume. They made a patch that was supposed to correct it. Michael, we still have that same issue. It was never corrected.
From 2006.
Yes. So now, and here's the thing, and I found results from people that refused. And when you get the affidavit in court, all it says is subject test refused. I found 20 people in the beginning of 2023 that were charged with refusals that provided, when you look at the COBRA data, they had more than 1.1 liter of breath. And so with the state, I'm telling you, you're right. Let's go with everybody. Don't drink and drive in Florida, because these machines and the state, where they manipulate the data, you'll wind up having to spend $20,000 to prove that you weren't drunk.
And even if you even if you refuse, you lose, because you deal with an immediate license suspension. And even if the license isn't important, more importantly, you're still arming the state with incriminating evidence in terms of their ability to argue your, quote, consciousness of guilt. So it's a lose-lose proposition.
The state attorneys are holding these affidavits up, like you said, like Moses, and they know that this machine is still flawed and the instructions are still messed up in it. Tell me that's not.
But they will tout it and loud it. They will tout it and loud it until the end of time.
Yes. Yeah.
Stephen, I want to thank you very much for coming on. It's really hard for a smart guy like you to dumb down things for a troglodyte like me to be able to deal with. And that's one of the things that makes you such a great expert.
We probably need to do a couple more episodes so we can get into some more.
I'd be happy to have you on again. My question to our producers is whether or not our second tier guests are in the queue. If they are, we'll move on to part 2. And if they're not, we can keep going. But I need our producer to tell me that so that I know whether or not we're good to move on to part 2 with the Lifesaver folks.
And there's the Gladiator.
Yay, nay,
right,
Rachel? Huh?
Everybody.
We are good to go.
All right, Stephen, I want to thank you very much for coming on today. I will take you up on your quasi offer to come back again, and we can talk about some other aspects. But thank you so very much. Your expertise
thank you for having me,
on this
Michael.
show, but even more in a courtroom. You are the bomb, and I appreciate you very much. Thank you again.
Thank you, Michael.
Rachel, bring in. Let's move on to part number 2. So what we have now that Stephen has left us, we're moving on to part number 2 of our show. And now we're going to talk about post-conviction or post-arrest breath machines. And I have with me Jeff and Anna. Hello, Jeff. Hello, Anna.
Good afternoon. Good afternoon, sir.
Jeff and Anna work with a company called Lifesaver. Lifesaver. And Lifesaver is a company that does IID or ignition interlock device technology and support. They provide the equipment, they provide the service, they provide the support, and they work for both government, private entities, and sometimes even regular citizens with regards to IIDs. We have some pictures will pop up at some point to show you what these devices look like, but the distinction between the first half of the show and this half of the show is what we were talking about earlier with Steve Daniels was the breath test that a police officer asks you for before you are formally arrested for a DUI, before you are accused of that crime. This end of the show and what Jeff and Anna are involved in are interlock ignition devices, and we may also touch on scram devices as well, but basically both are the same genre, meaning they are equipment that are used primarily through the criminal justice system to monitor alcohol intake for any of a number of purposes. I would suspect that the most common purpose is when somebody is sentenced after a DUI and they are required either by the judge or by the administrative code, meaning DMV, to install an ignition interlock device as a condition of being able to keep their driving privilege. There is also, so it could be an administrative component where DMV says, no ticky, no driving, no blow into the IID, no car, no license, or it could be a judge ordering you to do it as a condition of probation. Alternatively, as I said, there are people, and I would suspect maybe a lot of parents who give kids cars to their kids want an ignition interlock device in the vehicle because that way they can assure themselves that the device, by definition, locks the ignition and does not allow the car to start if it detects a breath sample. But let me not steal your thunder. Why don't you guys tell the audience what it is what is an IID? How does it work? What is it? What does it do?
Well, first of all, number one, thank you for having us on. This is rare that we can come out and speak about what we do and talk about the passion that we have in regard to this process of rehabilitation. That's what this is all about, right? So an ignition interlock device, I have a nice little version of what we have here. We give these out at our conferences. So people have a nice small version, but it's going to be a breathalyzer that's connected or tethered to your vehicle's ignition system. And for general purposes, it prevents the use of the vehicle when alcohol is detected. It's going to detect alcohol. There are several reasons why. One, yes, they've been drinking still. The device is not stopping them from drinking. Or two, perhaps, which happens, although instructed prior, they have used some type of fragrance or some type of drink, sports drink, something that maybe triggers the device, in which case they get briefly locked out and they try again. But that's very, very rare because of the fail safes we have. Anna, anything I missed there?
No, I mean, that's the purpose of the unit, is to stop the vehicle from starting when a person fails a test. The handset itself or the ignition interlock is set to fail at a 0.025. That's the regulation that is in place with DMV. So anything above that amount is considered a failure on the handset. Anything below will allow the vehicle to start. The client does fail a test, like Jeff mentioned. They have to wait a few minutes and take another test, and they'll be able to go up on their day. The handset does require a periodic retest, so clients are required to take a test as they're driving. They have a 5-minute window to take that test, so it's not like they have to pull over that second to take the test, but there's a 5-minute window to take their test. If they were to fail the test or refuse to take it, it does cause that the horn in the vehicle start honking, kind of to alert the public that there's that something's going on with that vehicle. And then the bigger highlight there as well is we're not allowed to turn the vehicle off. We can only prevent it from starting. So, something I get asked a lot. All we can do is just prevent the driver from starting. That's what the horn is for, to alert the public if someone is driving with alcohol in their system.
So we were talking earlier about the breathalyzer machine itself, and I know Jeff is spent many years as a law enforcement officer and actually is still a reserve officer in Windmere, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, sir.
So, there's a definite difference in philosophy, and I don't know about mechanics, and that's what I want to ask about. But obviously the philosophy is different when we're talking about breathalyzer or intoxilyzer, law enforcement, DUI, probable cause establishing machines, right?
Mm-hmm.
Those are there just strictly to determine whether or not you have a BAC, a breath alcohol content, and if so, what it is. But there's no other consequence to it other than uploading that data to the Department of Highway Safety and Motor Vehicles so that they can deal with your driver's license. On your end, there's got to be some connection to somewhere to something, because otherwise, what would be the point, right? There's got to be a record. There's got to be a trail every time somebody blows.
Mm-hmm.
How does the device work? How does it communicate, and who does it communicate with?
So our handset, the client installs a device. It's in their vehicle for a month. At the end of the month, they have an appointment scheduled at the install shop. When they come in for their appointment, we calibrate their device to ensure it's working properly. We do a test on the unit to make sure it's functioning the way it's designed. And at the same time, we download the data from the device, and it's uploaded to our software and also transmitted electronically to DMV. The data is there for courts, probation, you name it, whoever's overseeing the case. But we do this on a routine basis. Every month, the client has to return, and we do the calibration of the handset just to ensure that it's in the right, in the right metrics and functioning properly.
So there's obviously cost associated with all that, right? I mean,
Correct.
Let me ask you this. So let's say that I'm court ordered or DMV ordered to have the device. I don't have a choice.
Yep.
The court and DMV don't pay for that. I have to pay for it, correct?
Correct.
Now, am I buying the device or am I leasing the device?
You are leasing the device from us for whatever term frame you need the handset.
So let's say the DMV says I need it for 6 months or a year. So I'm paying you a monthly fee for the device.
Correct.
And what other costs are there that are associated with it? Just to give people a kind of feel. I'm not locking you into numbers, but just a general idea of what because again, this is part of the price tag of a DUI. Most of the times these things involve a DUI case, right? I mean, maybe I have my 16-year-old son and I decide I don't care what it costs. I want to make sure that my son is not starting the car if he's had a sip of alcohol. But let's just go with the court-ordered device. What's the general cost associated with that?
So as you know, right, when someone is hit with a DUI, between court costs, lawyer fees, citations, there's a lot that is involved with getting their license back and even paying fines with the DMV. We try our best to provide the best price possible. We are, I think, one of the only companies that we actually give you your discount up front. We're not a rebate type of deal. Our installation costs can vary between $80 to $250, and it's based on the year, make, and model of the vehicle. Of course, something that's brand new might take up to 3 hours to install because of how difficult the wiring is. And then an older vehicle, those are your $80 installs that are quick in and out
Do you ever get, I'm
Mhm.
assuming I didn't mean to cut you off, but
No,
I'm
you're
assuming
fine.
you get some problem clients, like, the guy who's got the Lamborghini or the, super muscle car that he's restored, and
Yeah.
they don't want you tinkering with it. How do you deal with those folks?
Like we deal with everyone else. You have those, like you said, especially in Miami. We have a lot of nice, pretty vehicles out there. Like we do with any other install. We make sure that the driver, comes and see the vehicle. There's like no dents or anything on there before we start. The install process is the same for pretty much. It's taking apart the vehicle, finding the right wires, and tapping into those wires, and then just putting it back together, like when the vehicle was brought in. So the installation costs, like I said, 80 to 250. The monthly calibration, because I do return once a month to calibrate, to download data, and just to check the device, make sure it's functioning properly. That can range between 100 to 140.
And is there a separate fee for the lease of the equipment itself?
No, that's pretty
It's
much
all
everything
included.
combined. Yeah, and like I said, I'm giving you like a
No,
estimated.
those are ballparks. I'm not trying to lock you in there.
Yeah, just so like in a range of what we typically see, but like I said, it's all based on the vendor. That's why it's good to price shop. You can make sure you're getting the better deal. But yeah, that's pretty much it. And then at time of removal, there's a fee to have the device removed out of the vehicle.
And what about the device itself? So some of these first of all, how long has this technology been on the market?
Well,
Do you know when IIDs began, approximately?
I couldn't give you a date off the top of my head, but I know I've been with like the company LifeSafer for 17 years.
Yeah, so I think it's about 25 years that. Yeah, I think it's about 25 years that these things have existed. And like any other tech, if we like take, for example, a cell phone tech, and remember, people were carrying around literal suitcases with the first cell phones, and then they became portable in terms of they were like a brick. Remember the old Motorola brick phone? And now, of course, look at how technology has come. So IIDs are going to follow the same trend, right? They probably started much bigger and much more bulky and obtruse. And now they've become a little more streamlined. I know Jeff showed one a little bit earlier, that's just about the size of his hand, maybe even a little smaller. So the tech has improved over all this time. Which one are you holding there, Jeff?
This is our L250, which is our standard device here in Florida and pretty much our standard device across the country. It is very small. I would almost say this is about the size of an old Nokia cell phone before iPhone and Droid came into the world and put TV screens on. Very, very small, very discreet. This can go in a purse, a pocket, sunglass case, anywhere where people want to maybe keep their business out of the public eye. Very, very small.
You raise an interesting point. So it no longer is required that the actual device is hardwired to the car, correct? You're going to hardwire a base unit, and then there's going to be, I guess, some sort of Bluetooth connection between a handheld device and whatever it is that you're wiring in? Or am I wrong that the device itself is hardwired?
So currently the device is hardwired. However, on this port, the wire does come out very simply. So they can take this device, because as we know, in Florida, tomorrow it can be 31 degrees. And the next day, 88, 90, 900. You know how it goes. It could just be so hot in the car. So we do encourage people to remove the device to not incur any unnecessary damage device sitting in a car at 125, 130 degrees with the heat index. So,
okay, so it is hardwired. It's not a Bluetooth type thing.
Correct.
How does it communicate with you guys? How do you get the data? Is it you download it once a month? There's got to be real-time notification.
We have that capability, but it's not a requirement in Florida. So it's just download it once a month at their monthly visit.
So so let's just assume that I come the first of every month, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that means that I could have had a series of fails over that previous month before I reported back. You don't know about any of those until I come in a month later?
Yes, but there's also, if you do have violations throughout your month, the unit will kick you into like an early recall status, which will like make you return sooner than later to the service center to have that data downloaded. But if you're, following the rules, doing everything the way you should, your visits once a month. Of course, if you're constantly failing, going out drinking and then trying to start your vehicle, you'll be visiting that service center a lot more often.
Well, let me throw a little trick question to you. And this is unscripted. We didn't talk about this beforehand. It's just, I've heard of it and it's dawning on me now. What about those folks that want to game the system, right?
Mm-hmm.
They install the IID, but they never use the vehicle.
So we do track the number of engine starts recorded on the device. And then we also record the mileage on the device. That data is provided to the state agency. Now it's on them if, they use it or gives the person a penalty for it, but that information is available.
So in other words, you're tracking how many times in that monthly period that person has started the vehicle.
Yep.
And you're also calculating the odometer reading from reporting month to reporting month. So let's say I get a DUI and I go ahead and put the IID in my car, but then I borrow my buddy's car to do all my driving and I just leave mine and I start it every day and I blow into it because I think I'm being cute. But when I go to bring the machine to you a month later, I've only got 100 miles on my car in a month, even though I've started it 47 times.
Correct. Yep. That's there's ways to track if someone's actually using the vehicle or not, but those are two items that we have in place, which is the odometer reading and then, the starts of the vehicle.
So let me be clear to the folks. I'm not encouraging this sort of behavior. I'm actually trying to discourage it by telling you they already thought of what you think you're going to get away with. It's kind of like when you're a kid and you figure you're going to get away with something because your parents never heard of it before, like they never were kids and they never grew up. You think you know everything. The folks over at Lifesaver know more. And if you are on an administrative via DMV or a court-ordered program, they're going to be giving this data to either the DMV or the court. So one way or another, you're going to wind up facing the music. You need to be an honest player, correct?
Correct. And I'll jump in here because I think this is very important where my role comes in Florida. There is not a probation division misdemeanor or even some DOC that I have not stepped foot in and made contact with chief, deputy chief, manager, whether it's a sheriff's office or it's privatized. Every department in Florida knows me. Some of them know me more. There are a lot of probation divisions that utilize this as a tool reliably with a good case management program to actually contribute to good behavioral modification and rehabilitation. There are some that don't know about it. So when we talk about the communication, that's where I come in because I want to make sure these probation divisions are educated on the fact that this is just not writing on a court order. This is playing a very vital role in someone's rehabilitation. This could be affecting job, family, everything. So that is my job, is to go and actually educate everybody from attorneys to probation to anybody who doesn't know that this is a viable tool. So when we talk about the communication, I get calls all the time, including just the other day from Boca Bay, right down in South Florida, who said, hey, I had a violation. Can you go ahead and send me that? We had a 10-minute discussion and she now has access to a portal to see these violations in a timely manner and not necessarily even have to call me. So that's where our communication and where we step in and go, hey, this is not just, hey, they had 9 violations. No, let's take care of this because there's obviously there's an identification of a problem if you have clients or probationers that are continuously using alcohol with this tethered to the vehicle. So communication is number one. Education is right there neck and neck with them.
So we also, I mentioned Scram, and I know that's not really our subject, but it is also another tool used oftentimes by the court system. In many times in DUI cases where primarily I see it in most frequently in bond situations, because usually you don't get an IID until after your case is closed. And you could have an open case for, a month, a year, longer. And during that time, if you're out on bond, the court sometimes wants assurances, especially if you have a DUI with an accident with serious bodily injury or with a fatality, they're going to want a Scram monitor put on you. Now, noting that there are some differences. A Scram monitor is a transdermal alcohol monitoring device. It's an anklet. It's like a GPS monitor, except instead of tracking your location, it scans your body vis-a-vis sweat for alcohol. Is that correct?
Correct.
And do you guys also work with those?
Not in our department. So we're all IID focused. Jeff and I, but Scrum is a partner of ours, and but to tell you how it all functions, stuff of that nature, we're not the experts.
No, I didn't really want to get into that just so much as to say it's just another, because really this show is about different types of breath machines.
Sure.
and how they're designed, how they operate, how they're used for what purpose. Oh, there we go. So that's a Scram monitor that we're looking at on the screen now. But show us image number 1, if you wouldn't mind. What are we looking at there, guys?
Well, he's not a client for real, but he plays one on TV. And what you're looking at in his left hand is our device.
I don't know. He looks pretty happy to me. Looks like he might have had one or two.
He does look happy. They actually used me for one of these photos in Denver a year and a half ago, but they didn't use it for this. Darn it. The device on the right is going to be a device that's also found in Florida from another company. We like this picture for the mere fact that it shows the convenience of our small device versus, as you can see, larger than an entire hand and some on the right hand. So this
Rachel,
right here,
I'm sorry, Jeff. Rachel, can you zoom in a little bit more on that photo so we can see those two devices? Thank you so much. There you go, Jeff.
So yeah, there you go. Just a much better shot there of just the size and convenience of our device. We have on our device, as you can see here holding, we have 4 buttons only that are very self-explanatory. The device will tell you what to push, what not to push. When they're educated, when this is installed, they're given very solid instructions on what to do, what not to do. But this picture is really more depicting of the size and discreetness of our device. Because again, a lot of people who are convicted of DUI have full-time jobs, are mothers, fathers, kids, teachers, bankers, you never know. And they want to.
I get a lot of realtors I have that issue with.
In this moment in life, they don't necessarily want to pronounce to the public. So this is just a great overall shot of how our device differs from that of another company in Florida.
Go ahead and show us picture number 2, if you don't mind.
And just to add, on our handset itself.
So that actually is just zoom that in a little more. That's a much better image of the two devices side by side. So your device is the one on the right, the smaller, darker one, correct?
Correct. And our device comes in multiple languages. So the screen itself, we can set it to Spanish and some other languages out there. But, the client will be able to read the information, how, if they took the test properly or not by reading the display.
Show us picture number 3, if you don't mind. And I think that's the last one we're going to use. Okay, so that's giving us 3 different units. And again, in this image, yours would be on the left, correct?
Correct.
And the one that we see all the way on the right is the one that was in the other 2 pictures that we saw. And the one in the middle, I guess, is just a kind of in-between device.
Correct. Another option, another company, another option. And we always like to point out the simplicity of our device versus that of size and simplicity of others. Obviously, the more less is better. That's just an old adage. And, sometimes when you see these devices, a lot can be confusing when you're putting 10, 15 buttons on a device.
So I can see on that middle device, it looks like a TV remote. I mean, there's nothing but buttons on that thing.
Correct.
And yours obviously is much more streamlined. The white one, I don't see any buttons on at all.
I believe I've never actually experienced their device, and good thing.
But it is an awful lot larger.
Yes, I believe they have one button in the middle. I've actually never seen their device in action, so that's a good thing.
Yeah, I suppose. All right, you can kill the picture. I think we're good. We don't need any more photos. Thank you. So essentially, again, these things, these IIDs, to be clear so that people understand, they will prevent you from starting the car, but they won't shut the car off while it's running.
Correct.
So you will be prompt while you're driving at some point. Now, is that a predetermined time frame, or is it just random?
So the first test, let's say you cleared your first test, and you're going down the road. The first initial retest is within like 5 to 10 minutes from starting the vehicle. And as you drive the vehicle for a longer period of time, the tests become less frequent.
And does it learn like from past driving patterns, or is it just an algorithm that applies across the board?
It just applies across the board. There's certain settings and things that are built in to determine when a retest should be provided.
And so I'm driving and the thing somehow tells me, hey, Mike, it's time for you to blow into the machine again. I need to find a safe place to pull over and accommodate that, correct?
You can, but I've used a device when I've done demonstrations. I've actually had it in a vehicle for a few days. So you get used to the sounds of the device. The unit will beep when a test is requested. You can honestly just grab it, take the test, and then it'll beep to tell you that you're done with the test. You can place it back down. If you decide for safety reasons you'd rather pull over, you can, but it's not a distraction where you can't just take the test while driving.
So it's something you
minutes.
can do. You could physically do it while you're operating the vehicle, as long as it's safe and prudent for you to do it in that moment.
Believe me, the longer it's in your vehicle, you know what every little thing it does mean. So it just becomes natural to do while driving. But like I said, there's a 5-minute window, so you can pull over into a parking lot or whatever if you don't want to do it while driving.
So I want to tell the folks a couple of things just generically that I'm a member of the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, and I'm a lifetime member of the Miami chapter, which is the largest chapter in the state of Florida. In fact, the only reason we have a Florida organization is because it started as a Miami organization and it became so popular amongst defense counsel and so productive as a network for lawyers to communicate with one another. And really, even though we're all in competition business-wise, to assist our brother and sister colleagues in being the best advocates that they can for their clients by sharing experience, knowledge, training, information, data, motions, whatever. And it's morphed into even more, which includes business partners. And so LifeSafer has formed a partnership with the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers, Miami chapter. I don't know if you're with the statewide organization or not, but I know clearly you're with FACDL Miami. And you have incentivized FACDL Miami by providing discounts and promotions to our clients. So if anybody out there, particularly in Dade, but wherever you may be, because LifeSaver is a national company, you're in every state, correct? Yes.
Yes. Other than like Delaware, there's like one or two that.
Yeah, but that's not really a state.
Yeah.
So you're pretty much nationwide.
Correct.
But here in Florida, anybody who gets popped, you certainly service the state. And if you're in Miami, make sure that if you hire a criminal defense lawyer for a DUI case, that your lawyer is a member of the Florida Association of Criminal Defense Lawyers Miami chapter, because while DUIs are very expensive propositions, you've got bond, you've got lawyer fees, you've got expert fees, you've got court costs, you've got depositions, transcripts, production, subpoenas, DMV, application fees for hardship licenses, fees for replacement licenses. And then once you get through your case, if you don't win, if you don't beat your case, you're going to be dealing with court costs, fines, and things like interlock ignition devices. And a company like LifeSafer has gone the distance, not only to provide the support and the equipment, but also to provide actual discounts in terms of cash savings to clients that go through the FACDL Miami. Although I'm sure that you have wonderful programs for non-FACDL Miami people too.
Correct.
But we may as well plug both. So in the last minute or two that we have left, can you guys just do a little shameless plug? Why would somebody, because people have a choice, right? They don't have to go to LifeSaver. They just have to get an IID. Not to be confused with an IUD. That's a whole different problem. But if they have to get an IID, they can go anywhere to get it, as long as the company is certified and recognized. Why should they go to LifeSaver?
I'll start really quick, and
Take
I'll
your
let
time.
Anna wrap it up. And I will say, too, we hope to see a lot of FACDL Miami chapter members February 29th. You got an event coming up. Anna and I will be there, so we'll get to see you guys, our shiny faces in Miami. We'll see you May the 4th at your gala as well. So we're going to be almost permanent residents of Miami for quite a while. I'll tell you why. I'll make this very, very fast. Lifesaver really puts a passion into what they do. I'm not off the road as a law enforcement officer because I just decided one day not to. I put a passion behind what I do. The support that you have here in Florida between the attorneys and the clients is top notch. We are here. My feet are on the ground here in Mount Dora, Florida. Beautiful place, 200 miles north of Miami. We are here for you. My phone rings every day. I answer it. You don't have that anywhere else. We are here to problem solve. We are here to make the experience as pleasurable and smooth as possible, because this is not the best moment in life, but what can we do to get you through and take care of everything A to Z that you need done without you having to be on a 1-800 number for 35 minutes and only just a number to a company. You're not a number to a company to us. You are a human being that has something to accomplish, and that's rehabilitation. So with that, that's why I'm here. Anna, wrap us up.
And Lifesaver is different in many ways. We have local representatives, Jeff, and then we have another representative who's Fred Quijano. He visits all of our local service centers to ensure they're installing the equipment properly. We do routine visits to make sure that they're compliant with the install process, paperwork, payments, you name it. We do our best to stay connected with the service centers, not just shipping them a box of equipment. And, that's the training that they receive. We do our best to go out in person and really get to know the folks that are working with us. And just like Jeff said, is to give the client the best experience and help them get through this and, start from the beginning all the way to the end. And we're here for what they need.
That's awesome. So I want to thank you both because it's really been informative and interesting. Jeff, I really appreciate your actually having the device to be able to show people, compared to your hand. I mean, you're a big guy, but you're not Andre the Giant. So, looking at your hand would be like looking at mine, basically. I want to make sure that folks are aware. It's been ticking on the bottom, but I want to make sure everybody's aware that how to get a hold of Lifesaver if you need to. You've got lifesafer.com. It's LIFESAFER.com. You've got on LinkedIn, your Lifesafer Ignition Interlock. On Facebook, your Ignition Interlock. And on Twitter, X, your Lifesafer. Did I miss anything?
I think you got them all.
Yeah.
It looks like we may have froze up, folks.
Can you see us?
Hello.
I'm here.
Same.
I'm here.
You guys are good.
Okay, there we go. Because I think we froze up for a minute. We're frozen. I don't see anything going, but if you can hear me, if the audience can hear me, I just want to say thank you to everybody. My screen is frozen up, so I don't know if you can see or hear me, but I want to thank everyone. I want to thank Jeff and Anna for appearing, Stephen earlier for appearing. You guys have been great. I hope that you got some pro tips out of this, and you're welcome to call me anytime. You're also welcome to call Jeff or Anna or any of the folks at Lifesaver for your IID needs. Although we all here at your service and Miami's community newspapers hope that you do not ever have to get a DUI or need those services. With that said, I want to thank everybody once again. Great show, great time. We will not be having a show next week. Just as a heads up, it's President's Day, and we will be honoring the national holiday. But we will have a show, I believe, on the week of the 26th. We'll keep you informed. And as soon as the producers at Miami Communities Newspapers get this uploaded, we will provide you with links to be able to see the show on your favorite social media sites. With that said, thank you all again very much. Have a great day, a great week, a great long 3-day President's Day weekend. And we will see you on February 26th for At Your Service number 86.
All right. Thank you.
Good day.